Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tavern Talk. Thank you for joining us. My name is Philip, and I'm joined by Mr. Philip Martin.
Hi, guys.
Thank you once again for being here.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, we're going to do something a little different tonight. Philip is from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Legitimate movie critic. So I don't want to not take advantage of this opportunity. If you will,
I have the certificate. I actually got certified to do right. Yeah. They don't do that. If someone will pay you to do it, you're a movie critic, or even not even that anymore.
I don't know. Why I'm kidding. Anyway, I say take advantage of this, but award season is upon us.
Yes, it is.
Tons of movies coming out just in general this time of year. Beyond the awards bait, but several movies that are going to be talked about for the next couple months for sure. And so I wanted to take the time this evening to talk about a couple that are both reaching the broader audiences this week, as well as some that have platformed recently. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about Armageddon Time first, and then the BANSHEES of Inisherin and Tar, a couple movies that have all should be in wide release at this point.
Yeah, you can see these now.
Yes, you should be able to see all of them at least one local theater. So this is first one we're going to talk about is James Gray's Armageddon Time. Kind of in the vein of a lot of directors going back to their childhoods lately.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Since Roma, you've actually seen this sort of memory play kind of thing. I was just thinking about that in one we're not talking about in terms of Empire of Light, which I don't really know if Sam Mendes, that doesn't really correlate with his childhood, but it certainly feels like the same thing. It's like a movie about a movie house in 1981.
Right.
And this is really the time span here is really compressed. It's like from September to November at the end or the beginning of this kid's sixth grade.
Right.
Yeah, and it's got to be based on it. It has no reason to exist unless it's something out of this guy's experience, James Gray's experience.
Yeah, I've heard this is very much pretty autobiographical for James Gray. Yeah, this is I think even down to the set decoration in the house and everything. I was listening to one interview where he said his brother was kind of shaken by the experience of watching it just because it was so much like their house they grew up in.
Yeah.
You had Roma kind of kicked it off with, and I hadn't even thought about Empire of Light, but Belfast last year. We've got the Fablemans coming up.
That's right.
From Spielberg. So it's just, I've been honestly having trouble kind of trying to keep them straight.
I even when we talked about this when we did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I always think there's elements of the memory play in that because what Quentin Tarantino was pulling from that Southern California milieu back, that he remembers this stuff. He remembered the radio stations, the soundtracks, and stuff like this. And I think it's a fabulous device. It's something that's really great to do. Now, whether it makes for great cinema or not is a different question.
Well, that's a good segue. So we did just come out of watching Armageddon Time in theater.
Finished.
We legit just finished it. So what is kind of your initial reaction to this one?
Well, I'm going to filter it through the first thing I do after every movie is I lean over and I ask my wife, Karen, who's also a movie critic.
Yes.
Even though she won't be
here.
She won't be here. But she said it was like an edgier version of Leave It to Beaver.
Lord, I think you were a little hard on the beaver.
Pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, nailed it. I mean, I understand why this movie exists. I enjoyed this movie. Mm-hmm. Now, there are things about it that sort of, if this kid, what's his name? Banks.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the actor, yes.
The actor.
Yes.
The kid, that he plays Paul Graff. If Paul Graff, if the young James Gray was anything like Paul Graff, he deserved... maybe not to be beaten with a belt, but he needed some discipline. This kid did.
Yeah, that was interesting that he didn't. again, he gets himself in serious trouble here more than once.
Yeah, and they explain it away, or they explain it because he has this artistic sort of temperament, this,
Right.
this dreaminess. But, I don't know. This sort of thing wouldn't have flown in my house.
No, not at all. And you come into the movies expecting like the kids be precocious.
Yes.
And we mentioned Spielberg kind of like in that vein of like the children being smarter than the adults and knowing more than
You always have these magical children.
Yes, exactly.
That have all this wisdom about them. This kid does not have
the
any
case
wisdom at all.
No, he's extremely naive, especially about like his own family circumstances.
Yeah.
I guess a little bit of context on the story here. The first hour kind of centers on him. It is 1980. They are in New York. He is in public school for the first hour or so, and it's about that experience. He comes from a Jewish heritage, so his grandfather, played by Anthony Hopkins, has experienced racism in a way, and black people in the U.S. in 1980 are still experiencing that. He befriends a young man. Jalen Webb plays it's a young black man.
Johnny Davis is
Davis.
That's his wife,
it is funny to watch like his family try to be a little more ascribe to be a little more affluent than they actually are, and him kind of take note of that and run with it.
There's a lot to unpack here. This whole immigrant experience, because you actually have two different levels of the immigrants. You have the school teachers,
right?
The Anthony Hopkins side that looked down on the plumber, which was Jeremy Strong from Obsession, who's the character he plays. He's the father, but he's not the articulate, strong, father knows best type figure. He's on the spectrum, it seems like, and he's got this violent side to him, this kind of ruffian side to him. And Anthony Hopkins is the grandfather from the other side, for the maternal grandfather. He's like almost an aristocrat. He's got this it's really interesting. I want to go back because James Gray did the movie Little Odessa in 1995, which is also drawn from his childhood. And to be honest, I don't remember anything about Little Odessa except it was set in Brighton Beach, which is where Coney Island is, and it's Russian Jews down there. And I liked it. That's all I remember about it. So I'm going to have to rewatch Little Odessa at some point.
No, I haven't seen that one. I kind of started with Gray on We Own the Night.
We Own the Night,
And then I've seen everything since then. Two Lovers, The Immigrant, Lost City of Z, and then Ad Astra.
I think this is his first. I think that was his first movie. He may have one before that. The Yards may have come before that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think that might have been his first one.
Yeah, The Yards.
But it is interesting. He kind of
he's
made a
dipped
couple
back
big,
into it.
Yeah,
but I can see how he can do this because this is like just these 3 months, and that was another discrete period. There's a lot to unpack there, and it'd be fun to write about. Maybe more fun to write about it than it is actually to watch.
Yeah, because there is a lot to like you're saying. It has a lot on its mind, I guess, because there is the whole. The race inequality thing, and then there's the immigration thing, but then you also have this the Anthony Hopkins thing was interesting because he was like, you got to play the game,
right?
You got to play the game, but also you got to stick up for the little man, and you got to do the right thing, and it's like, and you can see this little kid trying to figure out where he needs to land in that kind of dichotomy, and it's just like. I don't know. I always think it's interesting when writer directors, especially like James Gray, try to boil down their memories and just the essence of their childhood into 2 hours.
Into 2 hours, into a 90-page script. Sort of. And the Anthony Hopkins character, it's not a spoiler to say that Fred Trump, the father of Donald Trump, plays a big role in this.
Right.
And the messages that they're sending are not so different, but there's a different authority that comes to it because Fred Trump is just like this guy who's like, he talks a good game about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and working hard and all this, and Anthony Hopkins' character, that family really has done it. They really have achieved.
Yeah. It is interesting because that's a whole other layer of like them cultivating these elites to try to to run the world as they would like to see it. So.
It would be fun to write about this
exactly
because you've got and you've got this moment with Kanye and Kyrie Irving, and this anti-Semitism is having another moment as it's going to. as they sort of say in this thing, it's going to keep coming around. That moment's never going to end,
Right.
And it hasn't ended. So
Yeah, it'll be. There are bound to be a lot of for lack of a better term, like interesting takes on this movie, just because of how much it is trying to discuss who it's coming from, the point of view it's coming from, the perspective it's trying to tell, and everything. So I'm almost like more fascinated and interested in discussing it than I am necessarily than I was entertained watching it.
Right, exactly. So, it's more fun to talk about it later than it is to actually sit through it. That's not to say it's a bad experience.
No, yeah.
I mean, it's a fine motion picture, but it's going to feel a little underpowered and a little bit leave it to Beaver.
Bored.
Yeah, it's definitely very kind of methodical in its pacing. It doesn't have a big dramatic scene where somebody gets up and makes a speech every 20, 30 minutes or something like that.
Thankfully, yeah.
It is very very much a slow burn. Even and I wasn't necessarily sure where it was going or what was going to happen with the children especially, but it all kind of depends on what the I don't know. I don't want to say what Gray was trying to teach us. I don't think he's necessarily trying to teach us. I think he's just trying to observe and kind of figure out where he came from and why he is who he is today. And writing this kind of felt like trying to piece that together.
You can see why it attracted the actors.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's a great role for all these roles we've talked about. They're all really good. I mean, sort of like
Anthony Hopkins as always was just
real
mensch. Is that what he said? Mensch.
Yeah, mensch. Yeah.
But no. So at the end of each review, you kind of know how this goes. We do this one definitely is an initial reaction rating out of 5 stars. What would you go for Armageddon time?
It's a 3-star movie, and maybe bump it up 3.5 stars if you are a cinemaphile who's interested in the cinema of James Gray, which we really could talk a whole lot about. I would think it's probably in his top half of movies, but it's not his best. But it's certainly worth seeing, and it's a good. It will entertain you. I think it'll keep your interest.
Yeah, no, I would say I would land initially at 3 as well.
Yeah,
and again, I think if I watched it again and was discussing it with somebody as we watched it, we'd both seen it the second time, and it would be a lot more. I don't know, a lot more interesting, maybe a little more engaging. But it definitely brings up a lot to discuss. So I mean, if you're interested in the films of James Gray, or even if you find these kind of introspective, directors looking back at their childhood movies fascinating in a way that we get kind of a lens into different points in time and different contexts for different parts of history. It's definitely worth checking out because again the period detail is there as well, really well. So
it's just it looks great.
It does,
and it feels like 1980 for those of us who were around in 1980.
Okay, so second movie we're going to talk about tonight is just opening here in Central Arkansas.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're just getting it, but it is the latest from Martin McDonagh. I believe it's his 4th film, The Banshees of Inisherin. I'm a big fan of all of them, really. In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, and 3 Billboards. But where do you come at?
Well, it's funny you say that because I was going to say I'm the only one that liked 3 Billboards.
Oh.
Because it's just like every review I read of it now, and I've read 2 reviews from my guys, and both of them say, well, as somebody who didn't like 3 Billboards, and I'm going, I kind of like 3 Billboards. It's not as well realized as this film. This film sort of comes together in a really satisfying way.
No, yeah, when I first saw it in Bruges, I mean, granted
In
that was
Bruges.
08. I was kind of blown away just by the dialogue, the dark humor of it, and this one kind of rivals it. Honestly, it's really good.
Just my verdict right off the top. It's I don't know if it's going to end up on the top of my top 10 list.
Right.
Because I don't know what that means. But it is right now the funniest and the saddest movie I've seen all year.
Yeah.
I just don't like you no more. You didn't like me yesterday.
And it's there's really not much to pick on it. I mean, there's really not much I could criticize. I mean, it's sort of the performances are great. It's sort of seamless. And in case it's sort of the first half of the first hour of it was sort of like Irish Letterkenny.
It's a hard life, picking stones and pulling teats, but sure as God's got sandals, it beats fighting dudes with treasure trays.
Seen
I haven't seen
Oh,
Letterkenny.
you got to see
No,
Letterkenny.
I
Oh,
haven't.
God.
I know.
You all have to see Letterkenny.
Teats.
But it's got its own patois. It's got its
Right.
own language, and you fall into it, and you're sort of like, it's like the accents are sort of like Shakespeare. It takes like
Yeah.
maybe 10 minutes to get into the rhythm.
Adjust
And
yourself,
then you
yeah.
get the rhythm, and it's so funny.
Yes.
And it's just so offhand, and the characters are actually very bright in their own way. They're all witty,
Yes.
at least. You know, they all, especially the village idiot. You know,
He might
Very
be
cute.
the smartest of all
might
of
be
them,
the
honestly.
smartest one. Yeah, unlike the kid in he's got some wisdom.
He's got some,
yeah, exactly.
And he tells it like it is.
Yes, he does. He's the truth teller.
Yeah.
He's the one that tells the truth. And then you have the old crone who is the voice of doom. And it's all set on this little fictional island off the west coast of Ireland.
Right.
In
I think it's
1923,
1920, yeah.
at the end of the Irish Civil War.
Right.
And it's about a guy who just gets tired of his nitwit friend who's wasting his time all the
wasting-
time.
yes.
It's sort of like he's like Facebook, and he's just sucking all his attention. And he's
That's
he's demanding all this
Right.
from him, and he's giving nothing back. He's talking about what he found in his wee donkey's scat.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't even get like gratitude from him anymore by like being like fed back the likes or like or
Yeah.
what would equal him being like how much he loves his music or something. He doesn't even find that like satisfying.
That's right.
anymore.
He did, I mean, and Brendan Gleeson is actually a very fine Irish musician.
Life looks black as the hour of night. The point to blame is your only man.
And
Makes a
you know,
lot of
and
sense.
he's got these ambitions, or aspirations, and maybe they're silly, or maybe, but he wants to be remembered after he's gone.
Right.
And to do that, he's composing this song.
Right.
This song, which is what the title of the film comes from.
Yeah. And I love that he has like, well, you know, kind of jumping ahead, but like he
Yeah.
just likes the sound of it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't
He
really
likes the
have
sound
any
of it.
deeper meaning.
Yeah. Well, you know, but you can kind of find the deeper
Oh, for
meaning.
sure,
You know, sort
yeah.
of like, on one level, it's just this buddy comedy. It's sort of anti-buddy comedy.
Yes.
It's sort of this breakup, movie. But there's an allegory because it is the Irish Civil War is going on, and what happened with the Irish Civil War, just in case you are American and are not well versed in it, is that in 1922 the Irish gained their basically freedom from Great Britain. They're no longer
yeah.
part of England. Now they're part of the Commonwealth. They're like Australia and Canada, and all the guys who fought for that. Well, some of them were satisfied with that, and the other faction goes, no, we don't even want to be part of the Commonwealth. So they turned on each other,
Okay.
and that's what they're
That's what
fighting
they're
about.
yeah.
That's what the war is about. It's about degrees of freedom. It's not. It's like we won the war, guys. Yeah, but we didn't win enough of the war.
Right.
And that's sort of what's
I was
going
going to
on.
say, then yes, that does exactly
between
apply.
Brendan Gleeson and Colin. And we should use their characters' names.
Yeah.
which- Colin Farrell is Patrick, and Brendan Gleeson is Colum.
Yeah, and Colum is kind of like you said, he's kind of, I don't know if he's just come face to face with like mortality or something, but he's focused on that age-old question of legacy versus, making the other people in your life feel, making sure they love you more than whatever that legacy is.
Yeah, I think on one level he's a real artist, and it means his
Yeah.
work is really important to him. His work is more important to him than his friendship with
Right.
with Patrick, who's a pleasant enough guy, just doesn't have a whole lot going on.
No, the highlight of his day is getting a pint at 2 p.m. at at the
and
local
talking
pub
and talking to Colum. Yeah,
and
exactly.
His donkey, like his donkey, is like his
Yeah.
That's who he turns to after Colum is like, no, I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Well, Patrick is a really likable character
Yes,
because
he
he
is.
does. He cares for his wee donkey. He cares for his horse. He cares for. He lets the animals in his house. Much to the chagrin of his sister.
Yeah.
Carrie, what's her last
Carrie
name?
Condon plays
Thank
his sister,
you.
and she's great because she contrasts him as well because she's very much like, I read books, I aspire to be more.
Right.
She understands why Colum is kind of done with him, but still pleads with him to be like, You make him happy.
And there's that delicious moment where Colm is talking about some 17th century composer.
Yes.
And she corrects him.
Yes,
and
she
she points out he's an 18th century composer. And it's just really, well, as you might expect from a playwright, the dialogue is really precise. It's almost like David Mamet before David Mamet became, like, so mannered and so... You have to hit every pause and stutter and all this. It comes out. If you read it on a page, I imagine it seems really artful, but the way these actors handle it, it really is kind of Shakespearean in that way.
Yeah.
It feels natural after a while.
It's so natural. And the way they play, I mean, obviously we know that Gleason and Farrell have really good chemistry with one another, but this is a different kind of chemistry than they had in Bruges.
A little bit.
Because they're still kind of at each other's throats a lot of the time, honestly. But the dynamic is very different in how, Patrick he won't give up. He's so resilient. He thinks that he's kind of messing with him in a way, and he doesn't get it. And, Colm goes to great lengths to let him know how serious he is.
This movie turns black in a hurry.
Yeah.
It gets really dark, really quick. And like I said, and the sadness doesn't necessarily come from what you might be expecting the sadness to come from, because it ultimately is a really heavy movie. Yeah. But you'll laugh at it more than...
No, it's a great, exactly. It's a great, I laughed at it just as much as any comedy I've seen this year. But at the end, I really, felt a weight as well. Not to make it too obvious, talking about the darkness of it in the segue, but we talked about Carrie Condon and did want to mention Barry Keoghan. Because he really, he kind of steals it away a little bit. But he's this, like you said, kind of the village idiot. Everybody puts him down, but he's the one that is as frank and just honest with everybody.
He goes right to the heart of it.
Yeah,
he goes right.
Just calls it like he sees it.
Like when he finds out that Colm has stopped talking to Patrick, he goes, "What is he, 12?"
Right. Yeah.
What is he, 12?
Yeah, some of his and I didn't expect. I almost expected a Green Knight Barry Keoghan where he was in it for 2 scenes, but the importance he ended up playing in this movie kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah, and you invest more in that character than you think
much.
You do because there's a twist,
right?
And it hits you.
Yeah, it's kind of the thought I had coming out of it was what a specific setup. Such a specific setup, such a kind of almost fickle thing to base a movie around, and yet the broad strokes that comes with thematically are just so much more impressive and so much more applicable to so much more than I would have expected, given how specific that initial premise is.
Now, when I first read about what he was doing, it sounded to me a little bit, I don't know, arch. It was sort of this was what a playwright will do. He sets himself up this problem. I'm going to write about these 2 guys on this remote island, and one's going to not. And it's just one of those, but it actually evolves into this really kind of organic sort of thing. It's like everybody acts as in character. You go, that's exactly what this guy would do.
Well, and that's another thing too is I never knew where it was going.
You don't. You don't.
Speaking to the screenwriting part of it, and I don't know, if he was just kind of setting up and then trying to write himself out of the corner.
Yeah.
But you never. I wasn't ever sure where we were going to go with it, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, it's a great. It's a great film. It really is. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah,
it will make you cry, but it's really enjoyable.
Well, on that note, we'll do kind of an initial reaction star rating on Banshees as well. What would you go on that one?
Right now, it's the best movie I've seen all year. So I would say 5 is that the highest? I have 4.5.
Okay,
because I never give the 5. I never give the 5.
I'll do a 5. I hate to be boring and be I completely agree with you, but I completely agree with you because it's definitely it'll be on my top 10 list as well for that just belongs there. I was in the bag anyway because I've loved all of McDonagh's work up until this point, so you have a reunion with Gleason and Farrell and him what's not to love? And yeah, I ended up loving every minute. No surprise there. But yeah, I mean, go see Banshees of Inisherin. If it's playing near you, we can't recommend it enough.
And it is playing near you.
It's definitely playing near you. All right, up next we're going to talk about maybe one of the more divisive movies of the year, Todd Field's Tar.
Divisive movie. I think that's the right way to phrase it, because there are things I like about it an awful lot. There are things I don't like it about, starting with running the credits first.
Okay.
I didn't like that. I mean, and I think that it's a movie that a lot of people were going to lose patience with, because it really, the first half an hour after the Adam Gopnik, it's almost like watching, things develop in real time, and you sort of like want to move it along, but I don't think the movie would work if you did that. I mean, I remember being annoyed for about the first hour, and then when things do start, when the momentum starts to pick up and things start to fall into place without you being told them. It's like there's almost no exposition in this movie. You just pick things up from like the way people look at each other. The knowing glances exchanged between Cate Blanchett as Lydia Tarr and her assistant. Right. You sort of like get a feeling that something's going on, and you don't even know what it is. That. There's an early scene where she's talking to Elliot, Mark Strong.
Yes.
Who's, is like, normally you see Mark Strong on the movie, on the screen, you think, well, he's like some thug, know?
Maybe we just sound right.
He's like an international banker / conductor, and he's talking to her, and you don't really know what they're talking about, and you're sort of like, you're getting these snapshots of this luxurious life, and it's almost like, I just got lost patience with it, but then it redeemed itself. So what was your?
I've heard the Adam Gopnik part like referred to as the most elegant exposition dump ever. But really, it's just it's kind of providing the background of who Lydia Tarr is, what she's accomplished, and what the point she's at in her career when we kind of meet her and then go on this journey with her. My first reaction to it was, this is going to be that, end of the year movie, this like awards contender movie that I'm going to really like and enjoy, but that I can't recommend it because they're going to be like, why did you make me sit through an almost 3-hour boring movie about classical music, and which I get. Like, I get it.
Blonde is that movie, actually. Blonde is that movie. People are going to say, why did you make me sit through it?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate Blonde as much as a lot of people did, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I was going to say, I'm again said it with McDonagh. I'm a sucker for Andrew Dominic and his visual sense. So anyway, enough on Blonde, right?
Yeah, we can't talk about Blonde.
Marilyn Monroe.
I don't know. I thought Tar was fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, I really did. I'm a sucker for movies about the kind of process of an artist, and I hate like using that word because it sounds all like meh.
Perfectly apt. Yeah.
But it's. I mean, she is. There's a lot of, again, like Armageddon time. There's a lot of stuff on its mind. The thing that's going to come to kind of the forefront with this is its analyzation or discussion around cancel culture and things like that. But what I kind of found the most interesting was how it kind of dissected her building her own myth, I guess. Because it shows her, the album covers, how she's doing that, her suits and everything. She's very intentional about curating her image and everything. And I've always, I've always kind of been attracted to movies and music and everything. And like I found like the mythos of Michael Jackson very engaging, but never really thought of him as a real person. Right. And then in Tar, we meet this real person who is regarded as this genius outside of it, but like we see her go through these and we realize, maybe she's not the best person, but it's still fascinating to see how her
Yeah.
talent is not just in conducting music and writing music, but it's also in conducting that image.
The world of classical music has really got this sort of a problem that's analogous to the Catholic Church. It's like they've had all these big conductors over the past 30, 40 years who've been identified as sexual predators,
Right.
who've been using the people that they had access to. They've been using them as their little playthings. And now Field kind of flips a switch because Tar is a woman, she's a lesbian, and she's no better than Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
And you get this incrementally, and you get it, and there's a wonderful scene that's set at Juilliard where she's teaching a class at Juilliard, and she gets on a student for, was it Bach? That he doesn't
so.
like Bach because Bach's this old cisgendered old white male, and she starts ripping into him, and everybody in the audience is going to be on her side. It's going to like, yes, this woman is telling the truth. And then you find out she is this monster, this horrible person who's, a total hypocrite and stuff. And it's a really neat trick.
Yeah.
But it is a trick.
Field is just outside of his directorial hand being it's just very steady. There's not a lot of motion in the camera movements or anything here. It is, and Cate Blanchett, who we should probably mention, is she's in almost every frame of this movie, and she is. It is very much the setup of how great she is and how important she is, and then the slow unraveling of her downfall, because she kind of expects to get away with what those composers of the past did, but is living in a different time.
And in maybe in a limited sort of way, she kind of does. One of the things that is a very different movie, but in a very different Cate Blanchett performance, but one of the things that this movie reminded me of is a little bit of Todd Haynes' I'm Not There. In the surfaces, the books, in the
Right.
in the art design, the set decoration. It's just it's so perfect. I want to live in that world.
Oh yeah,
I just want to climb in there. Live in that apartment and have this sort of lifestyle.
Have a Porsche.
Written music for the stage and screen. She is.
Yeah, exactly. But it's ultimately this empty kind of monster who's there, and at the end you feel sorry for her.
Yeah, because it is interesting. At one point, I don't know if it ever clarified if they were married or just partners. They're raising a child together.
Yeah, Nina
but her
Haas.
partner-
I think she's her wife.
Yeah, but and they've clearly been together for
Quite a while.
Quite a while, yeah. And she comes to her and she was like, "Why didn't you?" She talks about instead of having a heart to heart, they talk about why didn't you come here so we could strategize, basically.
Right.
And it just makes it all the more evident that she very much knows that Cate Blanchett expects, or Lydia Tarr expects, things to bend to her whim.
That's right.
And it's like I said, the most fascinating aspect was definitely kind of just seeing the inner world of someone who is of such prominence, but Field in his screenplay takes it that kind of step further and dives into that art versus artist and what is more important, what will live on, and,
exactly,
and is who cares if she treated her
you could actually draw some parallels between her and Colum from Banshees, because she's
exactly
it's like the private life. She expects this sphere of privacy. She thinks it's irrelevant to her work.
Right.
So
yeah. No, it's a very complicated movie. Like I said, it's a very long movie. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes. But one thing about all three of these movies that I thought all of them did really well was, and maybe Tar did it just because it had the time to do it, was each of these worlds is so well defined, so lived in, especially that island on Banshees as well.
Yeah.
The 1980 in Armageddon time, and then just I know nothing about the world of classical music or anything like that, but just how particular it felt in Tar was just, again, very intentional, but
exactly.
It pays off
so
in that final shot too.
That you have to, it's made for this audience of 6.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't include myself in that audience. I enjoyed the movie, but it's really specific, and that's what gives it. that's what makes it feel regal to me. You know?
It's and this may like sound insane given I've said it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I honestly couldn't like wait to watch it again. And it feels like one of those movies upon rewatch, and especially over the years as you rewatch it, it will kind of become even more well regarded than it already is, even though it has kind of been pretty divisive. But it again, like Armageddon Time, it's one of those movies that people will kind of, you'll find discussions more about it, more entertaining than probably the experience of watching the movie itself. Yeah. But no, I was really taken with it. It's definitely an acquired taste, but yeah, I was really taken with it, and I'm going to go 4.5 stars on Tar. I really, I was unsure about it as it ended, and I was like, what? But as I just like kind of processed it more, I just kept coming up with like, oh my gosh, I see what they did here and all this stuff. So it's just really, really fascinating. But what about you?
Yeah, the funny thing is, and I don't want to give away the ending, but it really does feel tragic to me. You know, once you realize exactly what she's doing.
Yeah.
I'd give it 4 stars, but it's not for everybody. If you're somebody who can't take anything over 2 hours, you probably don't want to.
Yeah, no. Like I said, it's the one this year that the kind of the high pedigree film that I'm going to love, but I'm never going to recommend to anybody else to watch just because they'll. Yeah, exactly. They're gonna be like, you're as bad as we thought you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing. But no, thank you for doing this tonight. Thank you for
pleasure.
Speed rounding 3 movies here with me. I really, really appreciate it. But there's a lot to see out there, and so I'm glad we were able to do this. But thank you once again for stopping by.
Well, I won't say any time, but most times.
Okay. Good to know. And thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. We try to produce a new review of the biggest releases every week. It gets a little crazy around this time of year, but you hit that notification bell, you'll know when we upload a new video, so thank you for doing that. Thank you to the Movie Tavern for letting us see the movies here, shoot the show here. If any of these movies sound interesting to you, definitely, if you have a Movie Tavern near you, seek them out there. But thank you once again. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.